What's up, everybody? What's up? Thank you all for joining for another episode of the Cabrini Kid podcast. I'm your host, the champ himself, the Cabrini Kid, David Haywood. Thank you all for tuning in this evening. And I have a very special guest with me, a longtime social media friend. We've actually known each other for quite some time. So she's the homie. I want everybody to welcome to the show Miss Nora Valiente, who's based in Arizona. And she is going to help us have a conversation today about what boundaries look like, what healthy boundaries look like personally and in romance. But then we also hope that we can provide some tidbits to people who will pick up something and it can help them, through something they might be going through. So, Nora, say what's up to the people who might be watching this evening.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm excited to be here, David, and hoping that maybe through this conversation we can help some folks out that are kind of teetering between what they should do and what they could do.
And that's a huge fine line. One of the things that I always say is that just because you can do something doesn't always mean that you should. Um, and I think that's going to play a huge part in our conversation this evening. But why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself? Where you are, where they can find you, some of the things that you're up to right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, I am a middle aged woman. I am 48 years old. I am very blessed to have gotten into the fitness industry really early. So I love anything fitness related. I'm a black belt in jujitsu. I also have three children, and I have been married, have great relationships with my co-creators, and I am single. And so this conversation is near and dear to my heart. And professionally, I am very lucky and blessed that I have a leadership role in a very large corporate company. So I deal with male and female relationships all day long. And I'm excited to kind of dive into the personal aspects.
Yeah, and I think it's huge that you're coming from a perspective of a woman who has had relationships, obviously, some successful, some maybe not,
Learning
but
lessons. We call those learning lessons.
learning lessons. And I think that we have an opportunity to kind of figure out how we can, um, I guess, transform that information to the people who are watching. Because I think a lot of people are going to be in those same situations, right, where they have um, a maybe like a past relationship where they may have missed some cues or overstepped some boundaries or didn't recognize what their own boundaries were, um, which may have affected that relationship and can probably lead them in a direction of something that'll be a little bit more helpful going forward, in their future relationships. So when we talk about boundaries, what does that mean to you in relation to your personal boundaries emotionally, but then also uh, the second part of that is romantically. And I know you said you had some co-creators, so I know you can speak passionately about this, but what does that mean to you personally? And then what does that mean to you romantically? Boundaries.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, personally, and just as an example, I've been married twice with two very great men, 10 years each. I guess that's my cutoff with men. I'm not really sure. But I have fantastic, like I said, co creator relationships with them. Even though it didn't work romantically, we learned a lot from each other and we continue to learn a lot from each other. And you understand what it's like to be a part of a team. And so, we joke around that we should write a book about how it feels like to co-parent successfully, and that's because of boundaries, right? Having non-negotiables that don't need to traverse over anyone else's boundaries. They're just a clear set of rules, expectations, and that's absolutely important for any relationship, personal, professional, and romantic.
Now, do you think that if you have boundaries, that it's more inward versus a projection of your standards? And are boundaries different than standards? Oh, it looks like she's frozen. Nora, are you
David,
there?
are you still there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Oh, you're back. Okay, I hear you. Can you hear
I
me?
can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. Did you hear the question?
Yes. I did not.
Okay, so for people
We've
who,
got some lag, it looks like.
oh, we might be back on. I think we might be back on. Um, so with those, I guess, with your definition of boundaries, is it more interpersonal or is it a projection of your standards?
I think it's a projection of your standards. I believe that everybody has a set of non-negotiables that relate to your self-worth, and sometimes because as human beings and as women in particular, I can't speak for men, but as women we tend to want to meld into our relationships. We are chameleons. We want to support our families, and so our standards tend to shift, and our expectations and our boundaries tends to shift just to be a part of the whole, whatever is going to be most successful for the whole. And then we lose our identities in relationships and in marriages, and that happens a lot because you're a lover, you're a mother, you maybe work somewhere professionally, you're that person, but you forget that you're a woman that has her own expectations, her own set of boundaries, and typically it's us that will let go of that for the greater good, but it ends up hurting people in the long run.
Mhm. And I think you made a good point about from the male perspective versus the female perspective. And this is a thought that I had actually earlier, maybe about a week ago. Um, I think that women, and this is just from what I've seen, you obviously can correct me, but I think that women struggle or actively try to maintain who they were. Whereas men, when they see that old them slipping away, they're more it's easier for them to let that old them slip away and adjust to the new them, which may not be, it may be them giving up some parts of their personality or their past or who they were. Whereas I think that women say, like, I still want to be who I was, even though I'm a mom, even though I'm married and I'm in a relationship, and even though I still have those things in my life, I still want to be who I was. Do you think that when we add that into the conversation about boundaries, that as a woman, you set that line, like you draw that line in the sand early on when you're dating or before you get to marriage, and you say, I want to maintain remnants of myself? Or do you wake up one morning and realize I've given up so much of myself that I don't know who I am now, and I want to try to get those elements back?
Okay, so this is a controversial question. And the reason it's controversial is because the answer is the latter, right? Like I said before, women are nurturers just by proxy. We're nurturers. We want to support. We want to, um, step into our societal roles, right? Take care of our children, take care of our husband, be a supportive, to the figurehead of the family, right? And that could be women in certain aspects, and also men. But men aren't really, the expectation is not for men to really change much about them, right? When a man enters a marriage, he doesn't have to give up a career to have children. He's not expected to stay home most of the time. Right now, times are changing a little bit, right? The women are working more, making more money, but in general, they don't really have to give up a big portion of their identity and who they are so that they can fully give themselves to their family. So you do wake up as a woman, right? Because you want to nurture, you want to support. You wake up one day and, and you're like, oh my gosh, how did I turn into something completely different? I don't even recognize the person, and it's only in the sense of I don't recognize. I stare at myself in the mirror because I don't have anything that connects me, only to kids, only to husband, and maybe to work. But I don't have anything I'm doing for myself.
We have Berna checked into the chat. What's up, Berna? Berna says, "Hey babe, small world. I know this gem. Men have to do men have to do so much. We don't give them
And we
credit."
have the lag again.
Oh, it happens. It happens.
Do you
Berna
have
said
me?
that Berna said that men give up so much that we don't give them credit. And
Can you hear me?
from a
I think
male,
we experienced
yeah,
another lag.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
Bernard said that men do so much that we don't give them credit. I agree and disagree only because every situation is different, right? Um, every man in every situation is not giving up the same as the next man. And so it's hard to kind of draw a line and say, oh, every man is great, and and this might be going against bro code, but every man is not 100% a upstanding um gentleman, right? And that just is what it is, and that can go both ways. But I think that there are a lot of men who maybe they were men about town, and they were super into fitness, and they were socialites in their little town, and they were doing all these things, and then all of that got shut down, um and then they became family men. And depending on that man, it might be frowned upon if he says, oh man, I remember the good old days. um or some men say, I like the person that I've become now because of the family that I'm in. So it kind of depends on the situation, but I think it can go both
Yeah, I
ways.
mean, and
Uh,
don't take that to mean that men. I don't find men are exceptional. I love men; they're fantastic. So if you're out there and you're hearing this and you're really upset at me, don't be. There are exceptional men out there that provide for their families, are good husbands, good boyfriends, good male role models. It's only the only thing I'm saying is that in society, typically, right, if we're looking at roles, women are more expected, and it's changing, but women are more expected to stay home and take care of the children. If your husband needs to go to the gym, somebody needs to stay home and take care of the kids, right? If you're both into fitness, then maybe you're alternating. But if
Mhm.
not, and it's not to say that this is a man's fault. This is, as women, we just lose our identities. We do it to ourselves, to be honest. And no, we will take care of the kids. I will stay home. Because I want to help. So we will sacrifice who we are, which we don't have to. You can have a successful relationship. A lot of men aren't asking you to sacrifice. We're just doing it.
And so when we look at the broader conversation of boundaries and what's a healthy boundary, when do you feel like is the appropriate time to establish those boundaries with your significant other? Obviously, there are stages. There's the we're getting to know each other, now we're dating, now it's serious, we're engaged, we're married, we have children. When do you feel like would be, the emotionally responsible time to establish those boundaries in a relationship?
Immediately. You're doing yourself a disservice if you're showing somebody a person that you're not. Right? I feel like you need to show all of your cards. You need to put all your cards on the table so that you can be your authentic self and you can better match with someone, because my boundaries may not be acceptable to somebody else. It may be a non-negotiable for them how I operate in life, right? If I work a lot and they don't want a woman to work, right? They would prefer somebody who stays at home and who has dinner ready at 6 p.m. every day. I might not be a good fit for them. And so it would behoove me to show my cards, let them know this is who I am. This is what makes me authentically myself. This is what makes me happy. And in a partner, I need XYZ. And honestly, when it comes to all scenarios, especially when it comes to physical relationships in a romantic relationship setting, that is almost even most important when you decide that you really like this person, to have that conversation as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I can agree with that too. I think that in today's society, it's more beneficial to put that, I guess, lay that out early. And I think that we have had periods of time throughout society where maybe those things were put on the back burner early, but then came out later. Now, I think that because of a lot of advancements in society, we have an opportunity to put those things on Front Street immediately. And you could say, here's what I'm about, here's the things I like, here's the things I don't like. Where do you fit in that? Um, but also, and this will be the second part of our conversation, there's a bit of compromise involved as well. Um, but I want to take a quick shout out to my man Chuck Thirst checking into the chat. Chuck, what's going on? Chuck is also in Arizona. If anybody needs a realtor in Arizona, Chuck also doing a lot of big things. So check out Chuck Thirst on Facebook and Instagram. Felix, we got Flex checking in the chat as well. Flex says, true, got to show those cards early and see if we are a great fit, a real fit. Hopefully both on the same page. But that's also where, like I said, I think that there's some room for compromise. And Felix said, when do you compromise, if any? That's the tricky part, because when you're talking about personal boundaries, it's, I would think the frame of mind is a little bit different than romantic, right? When you're talking about personal boundaries, we're talking about our friendships, we're talking about our work relationships, Um, those are maybe a little bit more strategic as opposed to when it's romantic. I think things are a lot more fluid and we're a little bit more vulnerable, right? Like it's easy for me at work to draw the line and say, hey, this is not my job. This is your job. You do that. But in a relationship, if you say that to your significant other, now their feelings are going to be hurt and you have to deal with that for 2 days. And, now it becomes an issue. So, um, when we're talking about personal boundaries, navigating those personal boundaries, I guess like where's the disconnect between that and romantic, where you say, okay, I need to switch that off, switch on to my personal boundaries, and what does that look like going to work? Like you said, you work for in a leadership position for a very large company. That's going to be very different than how you approach your romantic life, I would assume.
It's not. So, so I've been in sales for a very long time, and in sales, just like anything else, you have to nurture, you have to have good communication, you have to find out how the other person communicates so that you can get on the same page. And every person is entirely different, right? And so that part is important. That's where you compromise. Like maybe I'm not saying what I need to say in the right way, but that doesn't mean to let go of boundaries, right? Maybe you're saying in an awful tone, right? Maybe your tone is condescending when you're talking to your significant other. Maybe you're using expletives or cussing or whatever. You're showing disrespect because you don't know how to articulate what you're trying to say that's very important to you. But boundaries expose people who are trying to have benefit from you not having any.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. If someone's offended by you having boundaries, maybe it means that their intentions were not necessarily the most genuine. Um,
Yeah.
but I feel like, and kind of to Felix's point, who compromises and when, right? Like if you're as a guy, if you're getting to know a young lady, middle-aged young lady, as you said, and she says, all right, here's what I got, here's what I'm doing, here's where I'm at, where can you fit into this? You're going to take that a lot differently if you're being genuine versus if you're not being genuine, right? And if you really want to get to know her, does that mean that you are the one that has to compromise if you feel like some of those things maybe don't fit 100%? Or should you say, hey, I really like you. I feel like you like me. I know that you're not going to be home every night at 6 to have dinner ready, but can we have it ready by 7? Like, do you compromise at that point and say, yeah, you know what? I'm feeling you too. I feel like I can make an effort to do that. Like when is it healthy to compromise on your boundaries, as opposed to it's too early, I'm not compromising because then you're going to take advantage of me.
I don't think, I don't believe that there is a wrong with boundaries. Men should have their boundaries. Men should have their expectations for what they want in a partner, and so should women. And when like we said, we put our cards out, we lay our cards out on the table, then we can really see if we are compatible, if we make sense. Because if my boundary is I work very hard, money is important to me, I do well, I love what I do in my career, and having dinner ready at 7 p.m. instead of 6 p.m. may not also work for me. So I'm going to need somebody that is willing to be a true partner, that can see that I am busy and that can jump in, right? And if that's a non-negotiable, that's fine. Doesn't make him wrong. That's what he wants. But the reason why relationships fail is because people try to compromise their boundaries, and they do not really show who they are. They're trying to be something that they think the other person is going to love more.
And do you feel like that's the person who's doing the compromising? Like if you say, I can't have dinner ready by 6, probably not 7. I might be super busy this week, so I'm not going to be cooking at all. You got to handle it. And I say, okay, yeah, that's perfectly fine. I can handle it. Knowing deep down, I'm like, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to tell her that I want to do that because I know she's busy. Is that being disingenuous to oneself, or is that the person compromising and saying, okay, I know she's busy. Let me try to fit that need in our relationship at the time.
Yeah, so I think those are one offs, right? You absolutely are going to have to compromise in certain situations day to day, right? You have to be adaptable, you have to be flexible in a relationship. Things happen differently every single day. What I'm saying is that if, let's say, you want somebody who's a great cook, you know, like a 5-star Michelin chef cook, like you love women who cook and can get down in the kitchen, you probably don't want me. Like I cook, it's edible, it's good, but if you're looking for a 5-star Michelin, like I'm gonna tell you right up front, you probably, that's, I'm the wrong girl for you, right? I'll cook for you, you'll cook for me. It's a partnership. And maybe one day I'm supposed to cook and I can't because I get stuck in a meeting, and you're going to have to jump in, right? You're going to have to be adaptable. It's
Mhm.
more so that you're, you know, I'm going to strive to be a better cook when I don't even like cooking that much, so that I can make you happy by making myself unhappy.
Mhm. Good point. Very good point. Berna says, but don't we all, wait, let me see. She said, but don't we all do things that maybe we would not normally do for someone who is worth doing something different for? I feel like that's such a slippery slope. Um, and I remember I posted on Facebook last week, end of last week. I said I'm going to stop using the term simp because I think every man could say at some point he did a lot more for someone he thought would be worth the effort, right? And it's such a slippery slope because I feel like you put yourself in a position to be taken advantage of, um because you're so compromising, you're so willing, you're so, I understand that you're busy tonight, I'll take care of it, and then one night turns into 3 nights that week, 4 nights the next week, 7 nights the next week. um and I think that when it, from a male perspective, we, to, I guess, to do certain things, it takes a little bit more humbleness from a male perspective for certain men. Like I grew up in a household where my dad cooked almost every day. So for me to cook almost every day, it's not a big deal. I can do that. But I think for a lot of men who probably don't cook every day, it's a hard pill for them to swallow to do that. But when they but if they know that up front, they might be like, "Oh no, this might not be the situation for me because I can't really cook." Maybe they're gonna end up ordering out a lot of nights using Uber Eats or whatever the
I know
case
people
is.
who do
But
that.
um, but then when it comes to your personal relationships, like when we're talking about work, when we're talking about friendships, um, a little bit ago you said it's not the same. It's the same principles that apply to those relationships too. Do you feel like applying that same mentality to your best girlfriends, or if you have best guy friends, whatever the case is, and your coworkers who I'm sure you've known for a long time, does it is it that easy to make those same decisions and make sure that those same lines are drawn in those instances versus romantically? Like, do you feel like it's easy for you to do that in those different environments?
So there's a very easy answer to this. A lot of this happens, a lot of the compromise stuff, the friction between relationships happen because, and I've talked about this, if you follow my, socials, you see I do my little morning like tidbits, but people tend to lean into a scarcity mindset where there's not enough in the world. There's not enough men. There's not enough good women. I hear that all the time. I meet great men all the time. I was married to two of them. It just didn't work out. But like I said, those are life lessons. You learn from that. You grow.
Well, it did for 2 decades.
Yes. But if you operate from an abundance mindset, like there is plenty to go around. I don't have to like white knuckle and hold on to something that is not for me because I don't think anybody else is going to love me enough or I'm not worth loving. When you operate off of a scarcity frequency, you're going to make decisions like that. When you operate from an abundance mindset, you're a magnet. You attract so many people just because there is a lot out there, and then you can make better decisions.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that that's part of a bigger conversation, especially from the male perspective, because I think that a lot of the decisions that men make is based off of a scarcity mindset.
And women.
And and like you said, and women too,
We do it too.
I think that men say like I gotta get it now because I don't know when the next time I'm gonna meet somebody like that. And that's a scarcity mindset. When the alternative is I'm cool on this situation and I know that there's gonna be another one because of who I am, you can chill and relax. And but like I said, that's part of a much larger conversation. Um, but how would you say, or I guess what would you say would be the biggest tell that you have, I guess, undersold your boundaries? Whether that be personally or romantically. What would you say would be the biggest red flag that pops up? I know you mentioned earlier, like you're gonna wake up one morning as a woman and say, I'm not me. But I would have to assume that there's tells before you get to that point.
Yeah, I believe everybody has like this internal feeling, right? And we don't trust our gut enough. We don't trust our intuition enough. I a while ago I was dating someone, and my best friend makes fun of me because I wasn't seeing the red flags, but she was sending me the reels where somebody's dodging the red flags. So sometimes we just choose not to see them. It's our own fault because we're operating off of that scarcity mindset. I think when you know that there is more out there for you, you just have a feeling that how this person is operating, the energy that I'm getting from them is sucking the life out of me. It is exhausting. When you are exhausted after going on a date with somebody and they're talking about their custody battles and they're this and they're that, and you say, I'll talk to you tomorrow, and they text you right away and say, can you get on a video call? And it's like 5 minutes after the date. That's too much. That's too much, right? So it's that feel that that other person doesn't uh, bring value into your sphere of influence. That's why I say you have to be very protective of who you have around you, because people will suck the energy. All people, even friends, will suck the energy out of you, and that is exhausting. And that's when you compromise boundaries because you don't want to argue, you don't want to, disappoint someone. So yes, I would say it's a feeling, a gut feeling. If you're feeling exhausted, if the energy doesn't feel good, uplifting, motivating, inspiring, if you're not inspired by the people you're around, you're in the wrong room. You're around the wrong people.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge point because um we got Geneva checking in. Geneva said, Amen. When you are avoiding home because the other person is draining, even if it's
Yes.
sitting in your car versus going in the house, that's a big sign.
Amen.
Sitting in the car in the driveway is super
I've been
diabolical.
there. I've been there.
Um, but given that you see a red flag, um, and you drive right past it, you keep going, and you develop a pattern of going past that red flag. How does someone correct it? Like, how do you look back and say at year 5 out of 10, at year 5, I started seeing the red flags and I kept going past it in the name of love. And the next thing you know is year 6, year 7, year 8, year 9, year 10, and now you are calloused to the situation and it's not fixable. Um, do you blame yourself in that situation or do you blame the other person for, I guess, draining you to that point? I would
Yeah, I
I
think
would say
yeah.
as a Gemini, I would say that I would blame myself. Like I'm mad because I let you get me to this point and I saw the flag 5 years ago. But if it's the person who's doing the action year after year after year after year, um, like where does that lie? Like who absorbs that?
Yeah. So outside of very volatile, like, you know, Munchausen's, like outside of really volatile mental diseases, it is people need to take accountability for their own actions, right? There are two people that enter a relationship and they each have to be accountable for their actions. It's never too late to set boundaries. So if you go down the wrong path, it is okay to course correct and say, you know, we really need to talk about something. It's been bothering me. I feel like I have lost myself in the relationship. That's not on you, that's on me. I've chosen to do that. These are the things that I need moving forward. So you're not blaming anybody because you've made the decisions along the way to ignore signs or to take certain level of treatment or be okay with certain behaviors. It's not the other person's fault. It's what you were willing to tolerate. So you 100% can course correct, which will then expose if that person is willing to be with you. And then out of that, from that, you need to just be courageous and start developing that self-worth and say that this relationship is not for me at this point in time.
So I guess after all those years, you get to a point where you say this relationship is not for me. Um, do you feel like I don't want to say let yourself down, but I noticed that you said you start to develop that self-worth. Um, does that mean that you never had it, or does that mean that you compromised it early on to accommodate the situation, if that makes sense? Like you go into a relationship and you have a high self-worth, but because of the other person's actions and some of their draining tendencies, like you mentioned, does that mean that you compromise just a little bit and a little bit and a little bit and a little bit of your self-worth over time? Now you're half as your cup is half full as it used to be, of self-worth, and now you're like, well, damn, I don't know how to get back to me in a reasonable amount of time. So this relationship is just done.
Yeah. So a good example of this is, let's say you're in a marriage you're in a relationship and you never worked out ever during the entire time you're in a relationship. And all of a sudden, you get the fitness bug and you start working out and you start losing weight, you start gaining muscle, you feel really good about yourself. You have that energy, it's attracting people to you, right? You either, you cheat or you tell your spouse, like now you're just sitting at home, you're a bump on a log, you don't do anything. Like, I need somebody that's vivacious like me, right? So I'm finding who I am and myself. And then from that point on, you're gaining a little bit more of who you are, which makes other people uncomfortable, right? Like, oh God, now she's feeling herself now, or he looks amazing, right? He's working out, he's going to the gym every day. And then that's when you have those little, like, oh God, oh, you're gonna go see your gym friends, you're gonna be a gym bro, or you get those little like nagging digs, because it makes the other person uncomfortable that you are working on yourself, because then people are nervous that you may not want them anymore. If you find who you really are, if you're operating at your highest energy, your highest frequency, you're operating from abundance, it makes people who are not extremely uncomfortable to be in your presence. And that's
Hmm.
typically what ruins relationships.
And then would you say that is the same for like friendships as well? Like if you're looking at your friendships from a perspective of I'm always the one that's planning our brunches. I'm always the one that's planning the movie dates. I'm always the one that's going out of my way for your birthday. And I feel like it's not being reciprocated. Um, do you feel like it's the same mentality when it comes to non-romantic relationships where you are the person who is maybe now developing into this butterfly where you now are maybe feeling yourself a little bit, but also investing your time and energy into things that make you feel better about yourself, and kind of outgrowing, those relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is an interesting question, and it's a little complex. So you can have, I have very dear friends who have been friends forever in my lifetime, and they're few, but I keep them close to me, and we don't operate on the same frequency. We're not all operating on an abundance mindset, or some of my friends may have their problems, their issues, but they never suck the energy out of me and my world. So even though they're still dealing with their stuff, if I'm like clapping for myself, I did something amazing, or I'm just like talking myself up, they're jumping in to do the same, even if they're not doing it for themselves, right? I'm the one that I'm going to do it for them, but as long as they're not bringing me down, then those friendships stay intact, right? And in life, you go through seasons, right? You don't stay, you're not the same person all the time. I think, for women, as you enter your 40s, your late 30s, you um, you change. You are more confident, and confidence attracts people because it signals stability. It signals emotional stability. I don't know a man who wants to be with an emotionally unstable woman, and I don't know a woman who wants to be with an emotionally unstable man. So it's security, it's safety, right? That's what confidence projects. That's what boundaries project. That you're a secure, safe person, and that's why people want to be around those people, because it's peaceful.
Hmm. Berna said, let me see. Berna commented, dating nowadays feels like too many rules and checklists. Someone's talking about wants and boundaries up front can feel more like a contract than a connection. I almost wrote off a good man because he was very forward about his boundaries. At first, it felt like a red flag until I understood the reasons behind them. Um, and I can understand that perspective too, because I think that if it's very early on and someone says, and they lay out the bullet points, um, you may not have been ready to have that conversation. Um, but then that also means that two people were not on the same page. And that can be, that in and of itself can be the red flag, you know? He's ready to talk about, hey, here's where I'm at, here's what I bring to the table, here's my do's and don'ts and turn ons and turn offs. And if you're not ready to have that conversation, he may have misread the situation 100%, or you may have misread the situation 100%, thought it was a little bit more casual. So um I can see that perspective where it might almost come off as a red flag. um but as a man, I also commend him for having that conversation, because I think a lot of times as men, we are comfortable dealing in the gray area. We're comfortable being in the in between, and
Yes.
until you ask us what it is, um, we're comfortable just floating. And the fact that he was like, "Hey, here's what I have, here's where I'm at," I think that that's commendable for him, especially nowadays in 2026. Um, it could be very different. So, um, and then she said, "But we got there, and he's a high quality man, so I totally misread him."
Love
So, so that was your fault, Berna. You did that.
that. Can I comment on that? First of all, I love
Absolutely.
Berna. What a beautiful voice you have, Berna. Anyways, um, so she's not wrong, and he's not wrong. Clearly, there was something about him, right? Which setting boundaries, even though it may be uncomfortable up front, still created that level of security of, I know what I'm getting with this person. I may not like it entirely. That was a little off-putting, but there was something about that had Berna wanting to maybe dive a little bit deeper, right? Like, is this guy going to be very rigid, or does he just not want to waste his time? Because at this age, time is the most priceless thing that
Right.
you have, right? If you date
Right.
somebody for 2 years and it's been a red flag since the first day, you're like kicking yourself and you're like, God, why did I waste so much time? I could have met like 20 great people in the time that I was dating, this nut job. Um, but you're not wrong either, Berna, in saying that, the first date should be light, right? It should be light. It should be, I'm listening more than I am talking. I'm asking questions to get to know who you are intrinsically as a person. If you're talking maybe too much politics, too much religion, you're talking, about your ex-wife or your ex-girlfriend all the time, to me that signals you don't have a sense of self. You're really nobody outside of these things. I'm not really getting to know who you are.
Outside
And
of these
that
circumstances, yeah.
right. And so that's a red flag to me. Now, if somebody else is like, "Oh my god, I love politics. All I want to do all night long is lay in bed with my significant other and negotiate and argue about, the state of affairs," then that's great. Then you'll love that person. But it is important to ask questions that dive into who the person is. And when somebody sets boundaries, I would not take it as a personal affront. I would take it as somebody who just doesn't want to waste their time. And not only do they not want to waste their time, they don't want to waste your time. They value your time enough to set those boundaries.
Well, and what I will say is, here's the thing about men. And before I dive into that, Susie checked into the chat. Susie, what's going on? She said, an intentional person should appreciate the standards someone has set. Um, and respect, she also mentioned. So yes, I agree with that. But the caveat to that is that men see standards and boundaries, because I feel like there's some overlap, and we'll get to that. But I feel like men see standards and boundaries as goals. And when you tell a man, here's what I want, we don't have an issue meeting that to achieve the goal, right? If you say, I'm not going to go out with you unless you take me to this restaurant, then we'll get the money together to take you to that restaurant. That's not a problem. And I feel like that does a disservice to men, but I also feel like women don't realize that they're doing a disservice to themselves, because when you set that standard, the way that society still operates is that men still are the highest earners. Men still have access to certain things that women are still getting into that arena to have access to. And so when you draw that line in the sand and you say, I'm not going to deal with you unless ABC, I think men will always meet that standard. If not for just a couple of weeks, we may not be able to sustain it, but we can always meet it for
the old switcheroo. Yep, I've had that happen.
We'll always be able to meet it for a couple of weeks. So I think that that's kind of like the downside to professing those standards and drawing that line in the sand and saying, here's what I'm about. Men will say, okay, that's perfectly fine. It's like a woman saying, I'm not having sex until I'm married. And a man says, all right, let's get married.
Yes.
Like, you told him what the standard was and you drew the line in the sand, and he's like, I can do that. And then a year or two down the road, now you're divorced. So I think that there's a little bit of there's a little caveat to that from a female perspective. From a male perspective, when men say, here are my standards, then I think that that's where men have to be, like we talked about earlier, way more comfortable in themselves and living in an abundance mindset if you're going to be that type of person. If you're not going to be that type of person every day, Monday through Sunday, 365 days a year, if you're not going to do that, then that facade is going to crack. But if you're actually living that lifestyle and that's the type of person that you want to be, and you're professing that, then it should be easy for you to attract the type of people to you that you actually want.
Yeah, so boundaries are never going to push anybody away. They're only going to reveal who respects you. People who respect you will take your boundaries into consideration, will take your expectations into consideration, and will honestly tell you if they can meet that or if it aligns with what they see as their non-negotiables. So boundaries don't push people away. It's saying, this is where I'm at. Do you align? Do you align with me? And I think people are thinking too much, again, in the scarcity mindset. Like, oh, there's not enough good men. That's the only reason you wouldn't state your boundaries. I'll tell you, most men are not going to make the amount of money I make. And I don't need them to. What I do need is somebody who is smart with their money, who is financially stable, and who is emotionally intelligent. And that physically we match up and we align. So other than that, the standard doesn't have to be that you're rich. The standard is that you're smart with money. If it's 40,000, you're really smart with 40,000. You make that stretch. You have investments in your 40,000. That is what setting proper expectations are. It's not, you have to go out of your way. It's saying, do you have behaviors that align to what would make a peaceful life for both of us?
So I'm I don't know how far I'm going to read into you putting physically last. Um,
It's
but
first.
how
It's first.
but and I think interestingly enough that when it comes to boundaries and personal and romantic relationships, um fitness, I think, plays a big part in that. And the reason I feel like that is because it's not necessarily about the aesthetics. It's a little bit more about like the work ethic and the dedication. It's more about, can you commit yourself to something for whatever the purpose is to achieve a goal? And fitness is just kind of one of those things that is the easiest to see those principles, right? Like, you go to the gym every day, you work hard, you eat right, and you do the things and you see the results. It's one of the easiest ways, I guess, to kind of apply those principles to someone's life. Um, and you said that you're into the fitness world, and that's something that just kind of took hold of you. But I guess in the grand scheme of things, the later you get in life, do you feel like there's a hierarchy of the things that you want, versus the things you're willing to compromise on? And, like, is how good he is with his 40,000 more important than does he go to the gym regularly and watch what he eats? If you say, well, I put the 40,000 as number one, and you come home one night because you were busy and you didn't get to make the 7 o'clock dinner. He ordered everybody Popeyes. Is that a problem?
I'll eat Popeyes. Um, yeah, no, I think the whole is women and men, as you start to age, as you're kind of getting on in life, and you've been through some relationships, right, that maybe have exhausted you. You're kind of at this point where you're single or you're dating and you're trying to find a connection, but you haven't really had that great of luck. Most people are looking for peace in their life. Like, you don't have to do this great thing for me. Just don't create chaos for me. Like, be a stable human being. Be able to control your impulses, your emotional impulses, to lash out and to call me names. Be able to, you don't have to agree with me all the time, but be able to listen to me and then ask me the questions that can get us where we need to be. Right. So, really, stability is, like, as a whole, is what's so important. And fitness plays a part in that, because you start finding who you are as a person, you start feeling yourself, you start loving yourself more when you can see on the exterior that you are changing, that you're investing. I always say invest in yourself. I have this ring, I call it the I love me ring. It reminds me to always invest in myself, never forget that I am the most important, because if I love myself, I will be able to give my love exponentially to everybody else. If I don't love myself, I'm only a shell.
Yeah, yeah. And Susie said it's about the athletic mindset, discipline, and consistency. Berna said boom, so I guess she agreed with that. So,
Yeah.
um, I think fitness plays fitness is a big thing, and I think it splits a lot of people down the middle, mostly because there's people who dedicate themselves to it, and there's different levels to it. You know, there's people that casually go to the gym. There's people that go to the gym and work out hard. And then there's people that go to the gym and they compete in a sport, like they bodybuild or they do bikini competitions or whatever the case is. And there's so many different levels to it, but I think the principles kind of always are the same. Like, even if you just casually go after work for about 45 minutes and walk on the treadmill, you still go every day, and I think that that's a big personality trait, when it comes to really figuring out like how someone fits into your bubble, right?
You, you know,
um Go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say no. I agree with that. I think one of my best dates just happened not too long ago, and um, I typically like to work out by myself because I like to, make myself near vomit. My workouts are very important to me, and so I typically don't want to work out with anybody else because I'm very regimented. However, I had a great date because we got to do something that was not only physical, right? That meant that we were investing in ourselves, but you have a chance to talk with each other, right? And you're finding common ground in both investing in each other at the same time. I see gym couples all the time go together. Those are very healthy
Mhm.
relationships. And even gym couples that go to the gym together but don't do the same things, right? Because they
Right.
have their own standard of what they're expecting or whatever their goals are. So I do think that that's, foundational level, just to be healthy, just to have good self-worth, and to have that self-confidence, and to just be an attractive person, is somebody who is dedicated, somebody who's not scared of hard work. And somebody who's not scared of hard work does it for themselves, right? They invest in themselves. It's kind of scary when you see somebody who doesn't invest in themselves, maybe poor health. Like, what can they bring to the table if they are not willing to do it for themselves? What are they going to do for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's a very telltale sign, like you just said. If they're not going to do it for themselves, what's going to get them over the hump? What's going to get them over the hump? Um, so we've talked about boundaries. We talked about recognizing when maybe you've compromised your boundaries a little bit too far. We've talked about how to correct that, in speaking with your significant other or speaking with your friends, about how to course correct, like you mentioned. Um, what would you say, I guess, is the difference between a boundary and a standard?
I mean, you can have a standard for a good coupling, right? Um, I would like a man that makes X amount of money, because with the amount of money I make, we'll live a good life. We won't be financially struggling. That won't create problems for us in the future. We won't be arguing about finances. We're both bringing enough to the table that we'll be comfortable. A standard could be, I like men who are tall, right? I want a blue collar worker, somebody that has strong work ethic. I think those make better men, right?
Hmm.
Maybe that is your standard. Boundaries relate and correlate to behaviors. My boundary, my non-negotiable, is that you're not going to call me out of my name ever, and I will respect that on my end as well. I'm not going to call you out of your name. My boundary is that you respect the relationship. You don't go out of the relationship. And if you feel like something is wrong, then you need to tell me. We need to talk about it, right? My boundary may be that, um, physically in a romantic relationship, I want this from you. X amount of sex, X amount of whatever. That may be a behavior that I value, right? If you're a person, your love language is touch, you want to correlate your boundaries to the behaviors you want to see. Because if
Hmm.
it's somebody who doesn't like to be touched and your love language is touch, I mean, that's not going to work. You can compromise all day long, but that's going to get old fast.
Right. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And I feel like there's a lot of confusion when it comes to standards and boundaries. And I think that a lot of people probably interchange the two. And when you said boundaries relate more to behaviors, I think that draws a clear distinction between the two because standards are basically just what you want, as opposed to boundaries are how you react or how you feel about certain actions. Um,
It's how you
and
want somebody to interact with you.
mhm, yeah, yeah, and I think that, like, from a male perspective, I've posted this on Facebook maybe like once or twice, but uh, men value respect, how their woman respects them, higher than how she looks. And that is a boundary. Like, respect me, like you said, don't curse at me, don't call me out of my name, don't go outside the relationship, those types of things, as opposed to a standard would be, I need a woman that looks this way. um I need her to be built a certain way, I need her to work at a certain place, I need her to make us x amount of money. Those are all standards, versus boundaries are going to be her actions towards you and how you feel about those actions. um Berna said, you guys are interfering with my newfound gym time. Shame on you guys.
Sorry, Berna. No, but you're so, in general, healthy people, like mentally healthy, physically healthy, emotionally healthy, um, are okay with boundaries. They're okay with that. They want to know. Again, it projects stability. They want to know what they're getting. They want a clear line of sight. They want to just be able to see who you are, and don't try to fluff it up. Um, you know, tell me who you are authentically. Authenticity it goes a long way. When somebody is, I was talking with a gentleman, um, after a gym date, and he told me a lot of stuff that doesn't maybe paint him in the best light, but he was being very forthright about his experiences, and I
Hmm.
found that highly attractive. I thought, wow, this is a person who could be telling me a bunch of stuff I want to hear and
Hmm.
making himself look so good, but he told me who he is as a person, and it was very authentic, it was genuine, and it was extremely attractive. So authenticity goes a long way. Healthy people are okay with boundaries because they can then respect the person on the other side.
Did that guy get a second date?
He sure did.
um okay, okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and wrap up. Nora, deep conversation tonight. What do you feel like you want people to take away from having a discussion about recognizing what their boundaries are, how to communicate that to their person, or romantically, or in their personal relationships, and then how to course correct? Like, what are your tidbits?
Yeah, I would say if you're already in a relationship, I think,
It's too
and
late.
this is no, it's not too late. It's never too late. I believe in love. It's never too late. But I do believe that marinating on what you want to say, writing it down, making sure to be very careful with your delivery, to not make it seem like it's this other person's problem. that if they don't change who they are, they're not going to make you happy and you're going to leave, right? It's not an ultimatum, right? You're more expressing, this is where I'm at in my life. This is what's important to me. And whether it's because you've changed or because you just lost who you were and did not communicate that to the other person, coming to the conversation vulnerably, and with the intention to come together, even if it's to come together to say, then this is not going to work, but in a respectful manner, will pay dividends, because you will find out that person's reaction to a calm, non-accusatory conversation where you're just sharing your feelings. I believe, I feel that in my life, I've this doesn't make me happy, and I've been doing a lot of this, and it's not your fault. I've done that. I've allowed that, but this doesn't make me happy. I think if you have that honest conversation, their reaction is going to tell you everything you need to know. And then it's up to you to decide, well, does their reaction project respect for me coming to the table, being vulnerable and sharing my feelings to try to realign ourselves to the common goal of being together? And if you're new to love, or if you're trying to find love, if you're in the single scape, then I would say that your self-worth, you loving yourself first, is going to be absolutely pivotal, because then you're operating on a frequency where you're not like desperate for love. Your boundaries are a part of who you are. And when you communicate those, it's because you genuinely want a good match. You don't want to waste your time, and you want that for them too. It signals respect on both sides. So yes, and it's okay to say no. It's okay to be uncomfortable. I've told people, do you want to go on a second date? No. Oh, are you busy? No, I'm not. I just don't want to go out with you again.
Side question, given that little tidbit, have you ever wanted to go on a second date with someone who didn't want to go on a second date with you?
No, I haven't, honestly, but I will say, I do believe in short dates. I believe in 15, 20-minute, like quick dates.
Wow.
I do. I think you learn a lot about people in an environment where you don't have a lot of time to get to know each other. I'm not saying speed dating per se, but you're forced to talk about things that are important to you in a short amount of time. That has worked for me. And I feel like when there's not a connection there, it's a very easy, like, hey, I feel, and a lot of times they don't have to let me down, because I'm saying, I feel like you feel like how I feel, that this is not really a love connection, that we're not really vibing. And then they will say, oh, yeah, right? Because it takes the ego out of it. Yeah, I also was not feeling you. Perfect. Okay.
No, I ain't feeling it either.
Yeah. I felt like you were feeling like that too, right? So it takes the person off the hook. But no, I'm really good at reading the room. This is what I do as a living. In sales, I have to read the room. If you're bad at reading the room, then yes, that's probably going to happen to you. But there's physical signs of if a man or a woman is into you, right? They'll lean in. There's certain things that you'll start noticing, versus somebody that's like trying to get away from you. So yeah, no, I read the room really, really well. I typically don't put myself in that position.
Okay. Well, perfect. Well, Nora, I want to say thank you so much for coming on to the show today, having this conversation. I think it was super important, because I think that this is something that a lot of people are going through right now. And for the people who don't know they're going through it, I think it's going to provide a lot of information for them, because I think it's going to trigger something in them when they say, like, yeah, like I think I have compromised a little bit of my personal boundaries or my romantic boundaries. And I think I've given up too much of myself, and I want to get back to that, and I think it was just a very important conversation to have. So thank you so much for for taking the time this evening on a Wednesday hump day, and hanging out with me and our followers. So we thank you.
Thank you. I hope in the
Everybody.
comments there's going to be that guy that says, I didn't want to go out with you in a second date and correct me. But go ahead.
He may comment and I will see
He'll be in there
and
somewhere.
be like, Nora, we got one.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody, yeah.
But everybody who watched tonight, everybody who's going to watch in the future, please like and subscribe, share it with your friends. The podcast, this episode will be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcast, iHeartRadio, and coming soon, the Grindhouse Media app, which will be available on Roku and Fire Stick, coming up here pretty soon, hopefully within the next month or two. So thank you for everybody who watched tonight and commented. Shout out to Geneva, shout out to Flex, shout out to Berna, shout out to Susie. We appreciate everybody for taking the time. But we will come back soon with another episode that you guys can enjoy. So until then, we will see you later, and peace.